Exposed power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No. I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize it. California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail. Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job, and she's just the best lesbian for the job. And with essential services, that's not good enough.
Bill Maher just unloaded on the Democrats. No filter, no holding back. Social media lit up as people try to process one of their own, taking the party to task. He called out hypocrisy, double standards, and what he sees as a growing disconnect. From reality, it's clear he's out of patience and isn't afraid to say it. Love him or hate him, Maher's done sugarcoating. If you want blunt political talk, buckle up. This could be just the beginning.
Axios ran a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in the state every year to people who I assumed were working on things like this.
California's taxes are sky high, but the state's still a mess. Bill Maher's had it. He tears into Gavin Newsom over wildfire failures, crumbling infrastructure, and endless government blunders. It's a brutal takedown that leaves you wondering, how bad does it have to get before even loyal Democrats start sounding like Fox News?
When asked why so many of the hydrants in the Palisades ran out of water, Governor Newsom said the local folks are trying to figure that out. Yeah, you got to do that before the fire.
Then another wildfire hits Pacific Palisades, and once again, Gavin Newsom and the Democrats look unprepared. At this point, it's their trademark. Big speeches, flashy appearances, and no real follow-through. Instead of fixing outdated fire prevention systems or clearing dangerous brush, they seem more interested in hosting climate galas and posing for photos with Hollywood stars. It's political theater, plenty of applause, but no results. If you're expecting fast, effective action, don't hold your breath. You'll get hashtags, speeches, and maybe a new tax. Just not the solutions Californians actually need.
At least in the Palisades, the hydrants were still there. 300 other ones around the city are just gone, stolen for parts. One of the 3 reservoirs for the Palisades was offline at the one time of year when it was most needed. LA's Mayor Karen Bass, the Nero of American politics, was fiddling in Ghana while the city burned and later placed the blame on 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years. Yeah, that's not that long a time. Maybe look in the history books to see how our ancestors handled it back in 2011.
Wildfire-prone California. An empty reservoir isn't a slip-up. It's a total government failure. In a state that burns every summer, how do you not have emergency water ready? Taxpayers hand over billions, but leaders focus on photo ops instead of fire prep. When the next blaze hits, don't blame climate change, blame the ones who drained. The reservoirs.
Maher said about cuts to the fire department's budget, there were no reductions that were made that would have impacted the situation. The fire chief here had a slightly different take. She said, "We are screaming to be properly funded. And yes, the budget was cut, and it did impact our ability to provide service. And by the looks of all the fire engines in the boneyard out of service because we didn't fix them, she's right."
Gavin Newsom once bragged on camera about California's new fire trucks and high-tech helicopters, promising they could spot wildfires before they spread. It sounded impressive until reality hit. Many of those trucks now sit unused in garages while the state burns. Meanwhile, Karen Bass insists cutting the fire department's budget had no effect. A claim as believable as saying removing brakes makes a car faster. This is why Bill Maher, and plenty of voters, are fed up. It's not just the incompetence, it's the spin and gaslighting. They promise the moon, deliver ashes, and still expect applause.
Exposed power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No. I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize it.
California has some of the highest taxes in the country, yet the state's falling apart. Homelessness is rising, services are broken, and wildfires keep wiping out communities. Meanwhile, Texas, with no income tax, is building businesses, improving infrastructure, and running emergency services like they mean it. Californians are leaving in droves, pushed out by crushing costs and failed leadership. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass keep making empty promises while blaming everyone else. The system isn't broken. It's being driven off a cliff by people who confuse leadership with
power lines that cut through Topanga weren't upgraded because it endangered an herb, the milk vetch, which sounds like something they serve at Passover. I mean, talk about not seeing the forest for the trees. You know what the absolute worst thing for the environment is? Wildfires. A 22 study found that the smoke from just the two in 2020 wiped out 18 years of carbon reduction in the state, which means we suffered the pain of driving those early model Priuses for nothing.
Only Democrats could claim they're protecting the environment while making choices that actually harm it. Years of real progress get erased because leaders care more about looking green than being green. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass refused to upgrade old, dangerous power lines, not to save a forest, but to protect a weed, the milk vetch. The result? Massive wildfires, destroyed homes, dead wildlife, and more carbon released than any diesel truck could dream of. When ideology overrides common sense, everyone loses. People suffer, the environment chokes, and the hypocrisy burns brighter than the fires they could have prevented.
California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail.
Californians. High-speed rail has become Gavin Newsom's favorite talking point, but after more than a decade, it's less a train and more a high-speed money pit. Billions have been spent, yet all we have are a few tracks, endless press conferences, and a pile of broken promises. The budget is out of control. The timeline is laughable and actual. Progress is almost impossible to spot, with the project burning through cash faster than any train it's supposed to run. Calls for an audit are growing louder. Still, Newsom showcases it like a grand achievement, when in reality, it's just another costly illusion in California's ongoing show of dysfunction.
The highest marginal tax rate in America, higher than almost all other states, and soon Greenland. What is included for that? Breadsticks? Because it clearly doesn't cover fire. That's government's job. Protect us from crime, violence, theft, fire. I'm not saying Alabama would have done better with fires by fighting them with prayer in school. But look me in the eye and tell me anyone could have done worse. We just got our ass kicked by fire, something Neanderthals fought to a tie.
This is why people like Jon Voight, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, and Mel Gibson want Gavin Newsom as far from the White House as possible. He's taken California from golden promise to golden dumpster fire. And now he's eyeing the presidency in 2028. Voters have seen what he left behind. A state run like a blindfolded toddler on roller skates. One of his most baffling moves, diverting over 80% of California's water to grow almonds, one of the thirstiest crops imaginable, while the state dries out, burns down, and begs for help. If this is Newsom's idea of leadership, America should brace itself. The next disaster wouldn't just hit California, it would be headed straight for Washington.
Good news is, our fire chief is a lesbian. Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job, and she's just the best lesbian for the job, and with essential services, that's not good enough.
Maher went all in on the Democrats, blasting their obsession with identity politics over competence. His prime example, Kamala Harris, chosen, he says, not for qualifications, but to win the diversity Olympics. The result? An administration so disorganized, it makes a bad group project look efficient, instead of leading Biden's presidency. Feels like it's curating a museum of firsts, symbolic wins, with little real impact. Maher argues that this focus on image over results leaves Americans stuck with rising costs, wildfires, and no real solutions, from identity politics to environmental hypocrisy. He tore into the party's failures and warned that cracks in the Democratic foundation are starting to burst.